And now one last challenge that megacities are faced with, it's the environmental issue. If we look at this graph, we can see that it's about air pollution. But one thing is clear, cities of the south tend to be much more polluted than cities of the north. And I think if environmental problems are particularly high in global cities of the south, it is because these environmental problems, this pollution, correspond to a moment in the development process where the problems generated by development are huge. That is to say that you have the new industrial activities which are booming, and actually those cities of Asia in particular, they are the real factories of the world today. And in the meantime, the means to tackle the problems of pollution remain limited. Okay, contrary to the north, where you are already rich enough to develop strategy in order to limit air pollution or water pollution, for example. Let's talk about air pollution for a start. So it's obviously a much bigger problem in cities than in the countryside, because it is linked to the essential dimension of what a city is, which is concentration and activity. Because we have this high density of people and activities and buildings, which implies a lack of green space, because we have urban sprawl and so massive commuting, well, the big cities are the most polluted places on earth. When you have low levels of development, it's an even bigger problem, because in fact most people that have a car, they may have an old car, much more polluting than the modern ones. And in the very poorest cities, notably in Africa, electricity is often produced by very polluting means, like private electricity generators that work on oil. Let's not forget that a great part of the Chinese electricity is made by coal, which is the most polluting way. A global statistic is interesting. You have nowadays something like 54 or 55% of the world population that live in cities, but cities represent 70% of CO2 emissions in the world. Okay, so they are very polluting areas. I like to compare these pictures because on the cover of Time magazine, which dates back to 1967, you can see an illustration of the problem of air pollution in Los Angeles. You have this problem of smog, which is, this word that is a mix of smoke and fog being the natural haze that you may have, but in very big cities you can see air pollution. So London used to be the city of smog in the late 19th century. Los Angeles was an example of a very polluted city in the 60s. Mexico used to be the most polluted city in the world 20 years ago. And nowadays, it's the Chinese megacities which are infamous for their massive smog, as illustrated by this picture, where you can see it's a real race, an official race, because people have these numbers on them, and some of them are running with masks, which, well, looks maybe a little bit excessive. Or maybe what is excessive is to do sports in megacities, or maybe what is a problem is industry, not sports. Anyway, another issue is, apart from air pollution, is all the pollution which is linked to the question of waste and what to do with waste. Again, it is a byproduct of urban life. You have a huge density of consumption, of millions of people that consume or that pollute simply by their simple existence and their professional activity. And in fact, sewage systems and recycling systems, or simply systems of waste disposal, are often inadequate in megacities of the South. Take the question of water and sewage. It remains a problem even in megacities of China. I found a statistic which says that in Shanghai, so not the poorest city in the world clearly, you still have 3 million people that lack direct access to clean water. And you have 60% of the water in Shanghai which is not treated. So that's a problem in all megacities. In Lagos, access to clean water is uneasy for, at home it's impossible at home for half of the population of Lagos. This picture was taken on a beach in Mumbai. That's maybe not every day like this, but on that day the beach was covered in dirt, in rubbish. Because you have a number of tons of refuse, of garbage, which is spewed out every day, which is absolutely incredible. And so you may wonder, where are the dumping grounds, or we could also say the landfills of Mumbai. Well, in fact, there is one landfill in Mumbai. It's of course absolutely gigantic. It's called Deonar. It's located in the southeast of the city, and you probably have seen pictures of Deonar before, because, well, Deonar is a provider of resource for some population of Mumbai, for animals, and also for the poorest of the poor. We may find some food or some clothes here. I've already talked about this informal recycling industry that you find in the slums of Mumbai. So Deonar is the only landfill in Mumbai, and you can see it from above. Okay, on this picture from Google Map, Deonar is located here. So we are in the southeast. The airport is also to be seen on that picture, and you can also see Dharavi in the bottom left corner. So Deonar is really huge. It is almost as huge as half of the airport. If we zoom on Deonar, I think one interesting remark we can make is that you have some residential districts around Deonar, some people who live very, very close from this vast landfill. And if we zoom even more, you will understand that, it's the poor people that live around Deonar. On the right side of the picture, you can easily recognize slum housing, because of this huge concentration of small houses with their blue roofs, because these roofs are, for many of them, made of plastic. And that's, I think, very interesting. On the left side, it is a recent community of tower blocks, those who are named vertical slums, because the view is far from perfect, and the population density in these vertical slums is as huge as in the real slums, unfortunately. So in those mega cities, you will find very toxic environments. People living in rich countries, like we are in France, would find these environments extremely toxic and very difficult. In fact, the dwellers of the megacities suffer every day from these polluted environments. It results in many health problems, which are not necessarily the same as the one in the north. I mean, problems of lung cancer and asthma are problems of urban people all over the world. But in megacities of the south, people also suffer from the problems which are linked to unhealthy water and the lack of sewage. So they suffer from diphtheria, for example, which means very severe diarrhea. There is also a social dimension to this problem, because the slums are even more unhealthy than the formal city, and epidemics can spread very easily due to the overpopulation. Urban planning would be urgent to tackle these problems, but it remains extremely limited. And here one thing must be said about the fact that in the countries of the south, notably in the LICs, environment is not a priority. It's economic growth and development which is a priority. The protection of environment means less to people who struggle for a living. It's a different view of the world if we compare it to the view that privileged people from the north can have on issues of environment and their awareness of that. Megacities are often very vulnerable to natural hazards, and we know that natural hazards, notably cyclones, will multiply and get more intense with climate change. So Mumbai, for example, is a city that is very prone to flooding. Major disasters happened in 2005 and also in 2017 of massive floods. They are of course due to the rainfall, which is very heavy, and the phenomenon of monsoon, which is normal. So this is nature, okay. But what makes flooding more intense is the fact that drainage of the water is made very difficult by the fact that it's a built-up area, okay, and so there is too much concrete. So the evacuation of water is difficult. And lastly, as always, the social dimension of the issue is something interesting and tragic, because well, the rich can build their houses in the most safe areas, and the poor cannot. So in most megacities of the world, in most cities in fact, the more dangerous areas are populated by the poorest. This is the reason why slums will be more often flooded than rich districts, and it's illustrated by these two pictures. One is showing a flood in Lagos, and the other one is illustrating a famous problem of the favelas. That's the name given to slums in Rio, which are built on the hillside of the Rio area, and so these hillsides are prone to landslides when there is heavy rainfall. Okay, and this ridiculous special effect was put there in order to introduce this ridiculous mind map, which came out of my worried mind. I tried to represent connections between all these processes and trends that are happening in the megacities of the south, from the causes of urban growth to the urban sprawl, and everything that is in blue is supposed to represent some positive trends, when issues in red are more negative, and in gray you have all the environmental impacts that have been described at the end of the video, which I hope you enjoyed.